I hate to break it to you, but my girlfriend who's 20 years younger is pregnant. I prefer younger girls, so I'm getting a divorce. Cool with you. I get divorce if you want, but take good care of our son. You should take the boy with you. Haven't you spoiled him enough? No, I can't. Because he is. I closed my mouth right there. If this conversation was to stay between us, there wouldn't be any problem. But this voice, Ken must have heard it from his place in the room. What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. Dale, I must retort, or else this man will not understand the gravity of the situation. Destroying our happiness and only thinking about his own. That's too selfish. I won't stand for it. Just as our happiness was taken away, I want to kiss his away too. Driven by such feelings, I decided to confront Ted with a shocking truth. My name is Mila Davis. I am 41 years old. I live with my husband Ted and our high school junior son. Deacon. I married Ted 13 years ago when I was 28. Back then, I was an insurance saleswoman. I used to visit various companies and sell insurance. That's when I met Ted. Ted was working at a local import-export business, and he had just divorced his wife. My wife cheated on me and left me. Now I'm living with my 5-year-old son, just the two of us, and it's pretty lonely, he said, looking somewhat sorrowful. Every time I visited Ted's company for work, I started talking to him. Eventually, Ted asked me, would you like to go out together? But we never went out just the two of us, because Ted always brought his son Ken along. He can't stay at home alone, right? I'd really love for you to be my son's new mom, but I guess you wouldn't want to marry a man with a child. Seeing him like that, I thought he truly cherishes his child. If he could care for a child like that, then surely he'd care for his family. So, I decided to marry Ted, but that was all a performance to marry me. In fact, as soon as we got married, it had changed. I quit my job as soon as we got married and became a housewife. Housework and childcare became my job. That wasn't a problem, but Ted started neglecting Ken. For our marriage, he even brought Ken along on our dates. Not just on weekdays, but even on weekends. Ted never talked to Ken. He never took Ken out somewhere, never played with him, nothing. Even after Ken started elementary school, Ted's attitude didn't change one bit. I went to all the school events alone, and he totally ignored all events that parents should join and enjoy together. You could at least attend some of the school events with Ken. When I said that, Ted made a grimace. After that, he sighed in annoyance and said, "Sorry, but I'm just tired from work." But oh, be quiet. Taking care of our son is your job as his mother, right? Just do it properly. And with that, he shouted and ended the conversation. What happened to the man I knew before we got married? I felt a twinge of regret. Then, one day, Ben had just come home from elementary school and was helping me prepare dinner. Terrence, suddenly a message from Ted arrived on my phone. Wait, he's bringing his subordinates home from now. Apparently, he was going to bring several colleagues home. Ted had just been promoted to team leader, so he probably wanted to deepen his relationship with his new subordinates. What should I do? We don't have any food stored. They would surely end up drinking at our home. And if that's the case, we'll need some snacks. It's not even an hour's drive from the office to our home. After some thought, I decided to go to the nearby supermarket to buy some ingredients. When I got home, I started cooking in a hurry. I'll help too. Oh, thank you. Then, could you please get the dishes ready? That we prepared as hard as we could, but there were limits. Ted arrived home when only about half of the preparations were done. I'm home. Hey, I brought my colleagues. Ted shouted at the entrance. I greeted them briefly and led them to the room. Then I served them beer and snacks. As I was thinking about preparing the next dish, Ted came into the kitchen and asked me, "Hey, what's happening with the food?" I'm cooking right now. There are snacks, so it should be okay for now. What have you been doing? I told you in advance. If you could notify me a bit earlier. Stop complaining. You should have this ready. Do you want me to be embarrassed? I was shouted at and was left speechless. Of course, there were countless things I wanted to rebut. But the sound in the kitchen could be heard in the living room. The guests must have felt uncomfortable too. Thinking so, I couldn't say anything in response. In the end, I just silently endured our guests. But once the guests had left, I had a big fight with Ted. I was angry at Ted for shouting at me just because of his own convenience. Then Ted puckered his lips and said in a childish manner, "Okay, fine. I'll have a party in some venues from now on. Cappy now?" After that, Ted started to hang out more. His spending got wilder, and he would head out early on his days off. Aichin had become a 7th grade student, and it started costing money for things like after-school programs. That's when I talked to Ted about wanting to start a part-time job. A part-time job? What, you want money for leisure? No, that's not it. It's for things like Ken's tuition for the after-school programs. Oh, I see. Get to do whatever you want. Or Ted, maybe because he was drunk, gave a careless response. Even so, I got his word. And so, I started a part-time job. The job was as an insurance agent. I asked a former boss from the company I worked at before marriage to make me a part-time employee. This should make things a little easier. Even then, because Ted complained, I couldn't slack off on housework. The time I could work was limited, and I had to prepare dinner before Ted got home. I managed my time well and kept working. Then one day, I accidentally let work run late. I hurried home, but Ted had already returned. As soon as he saw me, Ted asked with a sullen face, "Where have you been?" I was at my part-time job. Part-time job? You weren't cheating on me, were you? Ted stared at me intently. There's no way that's true. I denied it firmly. But Ted kept looking at me with suspicious eyes. As I was wondering what to do, Ted reached out from my smartphone. Let me see. I'll check if there are any men's names. Stop it. Shut up. As Ted forcefully snatched my phone and began to check the contacts. And he quickly found my boss's name. Hey, who's this? That's my boss. He's your lover, ain't he? All right then. That before I could react. Ted dialed my boss. Stop it. You just keep quiet. Thankfully, the misunderstanding was cleared up quickly. Of course, I apologized profusely to my boss. I urged Ted to do the same, but he simply looked away. It's your fault for making it look like you're doing something wrong. That's all he kept saying. Since then, things between us just went downhill. Even when Ken became a 9th grade, nothing changed. Is this really okay to keep this relationship? I would think that, but I couldn't come up with a way to mend our relationship. For before I knew it, Ken became a senior in his high school, preparing for college. But lately, things between Ted and I had completely gone cold. We hardly ever argued at home anymore. At least it wouldn't affect Ken's studies. Things can stay like this until Ken enters college. That's what I thought. Then, one day, I had to go near Ted's workplace from my job. If things were good between us, I'd invite him to lunch. As I muttered this, I spotted Ted's car across the intersection. Wait, is that Ted with someone? As I squinted, I saw 2 people laughing and chatting. As the word infidelity flashed in my mind. Accusing others of infidelity while doing it yourself. What a joke. I was too stunned to say anything. I quickly took a picture of them and went to a private detective to ask them to investigate Ted. I probably know the answer already, but the thought crossed my mind. The idea of divorce was already set in my mind. But evidence is crucial in these matters. So, I waited for the results of the investigation. About a month later, the results arrived. They were damning. He really had the nerve. This divorcing didn't seem enough anymore. How should I get back at him? Touched on a certain day off, lost in my thoughts. Ted, who was supposed to be out, came home unexpectedly soon. Rushing over to me, he exclaimed, "I'm sorry, but my girlfriend, who's 20 years younger, is pregnant." What? I couldn't believe my ears. But there he was, a smirk on his face, declaring, "So yeah, my girlfriend, who's 20 years younger, is pregnant. I prefer younger women, so I'm gonna divorce you." That's fine, right? Well, he certainly had the guts to confess his affair himself. However, I saw this as an opportunity. With this in mind, I decided to seize the moment. "Go ahead and get married, but please take care of our son," I said with a smile on my face which seemed to catch Ted off guard. "What? You should take our son with you. You've always been so fond of him." "I don't want to." "Because that boy is," I carefully chose my words. "Ben, who is studying in his room, should be able to hear me." What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. That being said, if I don't stand up to him now, he won't understand the gravity of the situation. It's far too convenient for him to destroy our happiness and go off and find his own. I won't let that happen. I want to snatch away his happiness just like ours was taken from us. Driven by these thoughts, I decided to confront Ted with a truth that would stun him. Since I hate to break it to you, but isn't Ken your son? He's not mine. What are you talking about? We're married, right? If we're married, then our child is our child, right? Looking smug, Ted declared. At that moment, I was at a loss for words. Is this guy an idiot? He's 4 years older than me, and he knows nothing. I was too stunned to say anything. Surprised at his lack of understanding, I exhaled deeply and hit Ted with the truth. Ken is your child with your ex-wife, right? So what? In other words, to me, this Ken is your stepchild. To make a stepchild one's own, one must adopt them. Adoption? Ted furrowed his brow. Generally speaking, stepchildren remain just that, stepchildren. To act as a real parent, the only way is to adopt them legally. At doing that, you can't have parental rights, and the child won't be legally recognized as yours. Of course, socially, they may be seen as your children. But there's no legal binding. A step-parent has no legal obligations, and a stepchild has no rights to the parent's inheritance. I didn't adopt Ken when I married you. That's why I can't take Ken with me. Wait, hold on. So, does that mean I have to take care of Ken? That seems to be the case. Although I wouldn't say you'd be charged with parental negligence just for leaving him alone. Dale, and is a high school student. It's an age where parents are obligated to raise their children. In other words, it can be said that Ted can't just abandon him. While looking stunned, Ted pleads with me. Come on, that can't be right. What can't? I have a baby on the way. I plan to live with my newborn and my soon-to-be wife, just the 3 of us. That was the condition for marrying Kay. Oh, so the woman he cheated with is named Kay. So, that has nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with you. This could all be resolved if you'd just take Ken. But I've told you, I can't, right? Just find a way. Please don't ruin my happiness. He was begging. Don't ruin his happiness. I'm shocked at his audacity. After shattering our happiness, he doesn't get to demand his own happiness. It's with clenched teeth. I tell Ted, no matter what you say, what can't be done, can't be done. You should ask your girlfriend. Could you? You're truly heartless. Fine, you'll regret this. Ted slammed the table and stood up. Then, as he picked up his cell phone, he walked out of the room. Following him with my gaze, I noticed him making a call in the hallway. That's why. Yeah, that's right. So, I could hear his voice. Eventually, it came back and said to me, just wait. I'm bringing Kay over. What? The fractions Fourier? You bringing her here? Of course, because you're refusing to budge. I have no other choice. And for some reason, Ted shouted angrily. It seemed like he didn't believe he was in the wrong. Well, we still have to discuss the division of property, and this might make things easier. With that thought, I quietly watched Ted leave. About an hour had passed since Ted left the house. He returned bringing a woman with him. As I stole a glance at her, she greeted with a look of discontent. She didn't even attempt to meet my gaze. I can somewhat understand her feelings. Just her meeting the spouse of the person you're having an affair with, no matter how you think of it, cannot be a pleasant experience. Regardless, Kay turned out to be the woman who had been in Ted's car that day. I can't deny thinking it's all because of this woman. But thanks to this woman, I can bring Ted down to his lowest. At that thought, a smile naturally spilled onto my face. How should I start the conversation? Well, I was considering this. Kay spoke up first. You're Mela, right? Don't you think your child is adorable? You've lived together for about 13 years, haven't you? Are you talking about Ken? If so, I do think he's adorable. I consider him as much my child as if he were my own. Then why are you abandoning him? You should take him with you. I stared at Kay. Sweat was beginning to bead on her forehead. I knew it. She condemns me with her words, but she doesn't truly mean it. I recalled the results of the investigation into Ted's conduct. If the current situation described there about Ken is true, it makes sense why she would argue like this. So, I decided to shake them up. I'd love to take him with me. No matter how adorable he is, and no matter how much I love him, legally, only Ted is Ken's parent. I can't become Ken's parent. But, yes, there's also the option of not getting a divorce. And you need to raise your child by yourself. Upon hearing this, Kay flinched. She then turned to Ted and said, I can't raise a baby on my own. Don't worry, I'll take care of our child. Besides, I'm definitely getting a divorce and I want to be with you. At that point, I interrupted. What are you talking about? It hasn't been decided whether we're getting a divorce yet. Shut up. I'm definitely getting a divorce, so you're taking Ken with you. We're gonna discuss that later. We're getting nowhere. Kay, what do you think? I turned the conversation over to Kay. To Kay, she made a pout and said, I can't raise someone else's child even if it's the child of the man you love. Of course not. I love Ted, not some child of Ted and another woman. Oh, I see. But isn't your argument a bit strange? Why? You don't want to raise someone else's child. That's your personal opinion, and I won't blame you for it. But you're okay with making Ted raise another person's child, right? As soon as I said that, Kay's face turned suddenly pale. At the same time, Ted tilted his head. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the baby. Kay's baby in her belly. This child is mine. I had told you that before. Sure, you did say that. But it's odd. According to what I investigated, the father of Kay's child should be another man. As soon as I broke the news, Ted turned to Kay. That with her face pale, Kay looked down and Ted stared at her. The whole scene was so ridiculous that I nearly burst into laughter. That we then, Ted interrogated Kay. Are the acquaintance of what she said true? I mean, about the father of the child. Don't be stupid. The father of this child is you. That and politate years. Kay banged on the table to argue back. But I calmly told her, that's not true. I have proof, look. Saying this, I laid out a single photo on the table. It was a picture I got as a result of a private investigation. Felt like the picture showed Kay and an unknown man talking in front of an obstetrician's office. This was a private investigation. They also check if you're cheating. According to that, you have a man you're seeing. Killing is the child in your belly. It's his, isn't it? Kay started to stutter, unable to speak. Seeing her like this, but did seem to have understood everything. He collapsed in despair. That's why you should divorce me and raise the child together. Well, you'll be raising someone else's child. But Kay, you're okay with that, right? No way. Don't forget about Ken, okay? Wait, let's get back together. Fine, late. If I break up with her, you won't divorce, right? And what? But you're saying whatever suits you? Sorry, but I was also planning to divorce. So this comes at the right time. And I'll claim a hefty division of property. Extang so. I slammed their cheating evidence on the table. Spread out on the table were photos of the two of them cheating. Of course, there were also photos of Kay and the unknown man. Ted picked up one of the photos and shouted at Kay. I thought I would prefer a younger man. I thought I could just get the money and break up if I have to take the child. Suddenly, Ted and Kay started fighting amongst themselves. Fight up, you were claiming LEC. I said, take your fight somewhere else, and kicked them out of the house. After that, I went to Ken's room. I gently knocked on the door and Ken peeked out. I'm sorry. You heard the conversation, didn't you? Well, yeah. But that was all on my dad. It's not like it's your fault or anything. But I'm totally fine, really. I'll be a college student next year, and I'll make my dad pay for the move and then do whatever I want. Ben flashed a slight smile. He seemed more mature than I had thought. I was relieved to see my son's growth. However, his father, Ted, has not matured at all. No matter how many times I tried to contact him, he stopped answering my calls. Even after a few days had passed, the situation remained unchanged. The divorce negotiations wouldn't proceed like this. And he doesn't seem to be coming home either. So troubled, I decided to go to Ted's company. But showing up suddenly might just be a nuisance. So, I contacted Ted's boss, Mr. Wilson, before heading to his company. When I arrived at the company, Mr. Wilson promptly attended to me, and he summoned Ted to his office. At the same time, he also called for Kay. They were the two of them in front of me. I addressed Ted. You know why I'm here, right? What's it? Because you won't cooperate with the divorce discussions. How long are you planning to ignore this? As I spoke in a strong tone, Ted shrugged his shoulders. On the other hand, Kay had been quiet after she came here. You look worried that your boyfriend will find out your relationship with Ted Kay. Well, he probably already knows since you're here, as I smirked. Kay looked downcast. Apparently, the man Kay truly loves also works in this company. So it was only a matter of time before Kay's infidelity was exposed. Ted resisted until the very end. But after being admonished by Mr. Wilson, he finally agreed to cooperate with the divorce discussions. Well, I'll be heading home now. As I stood up to leave, Ted voiced his dissatisfaction. Showing up at my workplace, you've got to be kidding. If this ruins my reputation, what are you gonna do? You're the one at fault here, not me. Besides, an affair won't get you fired. In fact, you cannot be fired for having an affair. But if word spreads around the office, who knows what might happen? It could make his work more difficult and the office a more uncomfortable place. But that's not my problem. I just came to talk about the divorce. That's whether Ted decides to quit his job or not has nothing to do with me. The same goes for Kay. Well, do your best. But that, I left Ted and Kay at the office. After that, I was able to get the division of property from Ted through my lawyer. However, according to the Vice Mr. Wilson, there were some problems. It happened after I left his office. Word of their affair spread like wildfire throughout the company. Eventually, Kay's boyfriend also heard about it. The two of them had a big fight, and the man broke up with her on the spot. Infuriated by her breakup, Kay demanded that Ted pay her compensation for damages. She claimed Ted abused her mentally. Of course, Ted was not going to agree to that. Eventually, it all spiraled into a messy court battle. And because the affair had become public knowledge in the company and they were now in court, both of them ended up leaving the company. Ted tried to find another job, but it was difficult because of his age. It seems like he's now working part-time at a local shop. Kay, on the other hand, is apparently pregnant and has been holed up at her parents' house. Anyway, I think they can't hold their heads high until the court ruling is made. On the other hand, things have been going really well for me. My boss even suggested that I come back as a full-time employee. Thanks to that, I'm now working hard as a full-time employee. My relationship with Ken, who's studying hard and preparing for his college, is also going great. He even told me, I have a girlfriend and I want you to meet her. Even though I'm not your mother anymore, is it okay if it's me? When I asked that, Ken said, even though Ted's my dad, I respect you more as a parent. Right now, I'm busy supporting my son with his college preparation. My name is Catherine. I'm currently 34 years old, and I've been living with my mother at our family home since my father passed away 3 years ago. I chose to stay at home because I felt it was too risky to leave my mother alone. I've been living at home for these 3 years. During this time, the worst kind of people paid a visit to me and my mother. The awful individuals were none other than my real brother, Bob, and his wife, Dumb. I've known my brother since he was born, and Jane, his wife, was a classmate of his since middle school. They've been dating since then, and Bob would bring Jane home every vacation, so I got to know her too. But to put it bluntly, I can't forget these two. To be honest, they used to bully me just for fun. But my parents were busy with their jobs, so it was pretty common for them to be absent on weekends. However, when they weren't home, that's when the worst time would start. This is our family home, which we've been living in, is a rather spacious mansion built by my father, who is a CEO. But as soon as I was told to play hide and seek in this mansion, and I got inside a closet, my brother and Jane immediately filled the closet with stuff, blocking my way out. I was often stuck in the closet until just before my parents returned home, and would frequently get scolded by my mother for messing up the inside of the closet. However, since my mother only worked in the mornings, she came home early one day and saw Bob and Jane stuffing me in the closet and blocking the door. She was furious as if she was on fire. But from then on, I was never locked in the closet again, but the harassment from the two never ceased. I hated my parents for not being at home when I needed them. Of course, I resented my brother and Jane, but I also felt spiteful towards my parents who wouldn't help me. However, when I reached middle school, for some unknown reason, Bob and Jane shredded my school uniform with scissors, scribbled all over almost all my textbooks with pens, and cut them with scissors. They even ruined my cushions and beddings. I later learned that the two, who were high school students at the time, got bad grades on their final exams and were upset from being scolded by their parents. That's probably why they took such a horrible revenge on me. I was shocked in my tattered room. Why am I experiencing such a thing? Why won't anyone help me? I stood there, lost in those thoughts. Then, when I didn't come to the dining room even at dinner time, my mother, who came to call me, saw my room and screamed. Upon hearing her, my father also rushed in. But my brother, who came in last, was struggling to suppress his laughter, and occasional chuckles slipped out. But to my surprised parents, I said, "Ma'am, Dad, I want to leave this house." As soon as I said that, tears started to overflow. No one is helping me. Bob and Jane are always mean to me together. And my toys, my study tools, and my clothes are all ruined. I don't want to live in such a house. I hate both of you, Dad and Mom. Actually, you guys won't help me. Perhaps it was the first time I cried so much in front of my family. Until then, I've been silently enduring and crying quietly, even when things were tough. But then, I cried out loud like a child. Seeing me like this, my mother hugged me and said, "I'm sorry for everything until now." Even my brother, after seeing such a scene, seemed to realize the gravity of the situation and tried to run away, but my father grabbed him by the collar. "Do you realize what you've done? This is a crime." Although my father didn't yell, his low voice was scary even to me, who wasn't being scolded. "A crime, that's an exaggeration. We just played a bit too much. Destruction of property is a crime. You understand that you need to compensate for it, right? But Catherine is family, and I'm a minor. Minors can't be criminals, right?" My father sighed deeply at my brother's frivolous words. Indeed, a minor like you doesn't have the ability to pay. However, it's the parents who clean up the mess. If you can't compensate, we will have to. We also bear responsibility for raising you this way. I think it's time you go live with your uncle. This uncle was actually my father's younger brother. He was a stern figure who absolutely despised dishonesty and was feared by all the neighborhood kids, kind of like a boogie mime. He was nice to well-behaved children like me and the other kids, but he had no tolerance for pranksters like my brother. Bob and Jane. Bob never got along well with this uncle. No way! I don't want to live with Uncle. I promise I won't do this kind of thing anymore. I've heard that too many times. When you and Jane locked Catherine in the closet, when you two chased Catherine around, when you threw bugs at Catherine, knowing she's afraid of them. Each time we learned of your actions, we scolded you and you always promised to never do it again. But you did it anyway. We can't keep someone who hurts our family at home, even if they are family. Never set foot in this house again. But that said, my father took Bob by the scruff of his neck and dragged him away. And later, I found out that my father and mother had been angry at Bob's behavior. However, even after being scolded, Bob didn't seem to understand why he was being punished. He just continued his annoying antics against me. He must be beyond help. That's what I decided to think. They're idiots in the world who don't understand the most basic rules of society. I learned this from watching Bob and Jane. Fortunately, Bob planned to go to some university on our father's dime after finishing high school. However, our father told him, "Someone like you will just end up hurting others even in university." And so Bob ended up working at our uncle's company right after graduating from high school. However, it seemed like Bob desperately wanted to escape our uncle's place as soon as possible. As soon as he finished high school, he rented an apartment with Jane, who had also just finished high school, and they wanted to live together. They started their cohabitation life with the understanding that neither our parents nor uncle would help with rent or living expenses. And then, for some reason, Bob asked me to lend him some money. At the time, I had just entered high school and was not working part-time. But all the money I had saved up, which used to be stolen by Bob when he lived at home, was fully reimbursed by my father and mother, as I had written it all down in a notebook. So, I did have the money that I had diligently saved up, but I had no intention of handing it over to him. And to Bob's request, I replied, "Aren't you ashamed to be asking your high school sister for money? I'm not even working, so I don't have any extra money. There's no way I'm giving you any." After that, I told both my mother and father about Bob's attempt to borrow money from me, and they were angry and promised that they would not provide any further assistance. I thought that Bob and Jane should live on their own without relying on others. Since then, I have worked hard and went to college. I studied diligently in college as well, and after graduation, I joined a company where I continued to learn new things. I was so busy with my own life that I had completely forgotten about Bob. But just as I had forgotten about him, an invitation to his wedding arrived at our house. The bride was, of course, and with whom he was living. "Oh," said those two are finally getting married. I thought as my parents and I discussed whether we should attend the wedding of a family member. However, a few days before the wedding, my father collapsed and was taken away by an ambulance. He was always a fragile man, but this was the first time he had collapsed, so both my mother and I panicked and called an ambulance. At that time, I reached out to my brother, but he replied, "I'm about to get married. Don't call me during this crucial period of my bachelorhood." Even when I told him that our father had been urgently hospitalized, he brushed it off, saying, "He just tripped, didn't he?" Make sure to come to my wedding. But with that, he hung up. Not long after, our father passed away. Given the circumstances, a wake and funeral were inevitable, so my mother and I informed my brother that we wouldn't be able to attend his wedding. Despite his insistence that we come, my mother and I decided to remain absent. We also informed Jane's parents about our father's passing and our inability to attend the wedding. Although Jane's parents understood our predicament, my brother and Jane said, "You guys not coming to the wedding is so disrespectful." I suppose the term rudeness was coined for people like you. We put in a lot of effort for our wedding. Are you trying to ruin it? That's the words that were left on my mother, and my voicemail were so absurd that it made me want to ask who the real rude person was here. While my mother and I were busy conducting the funeral smoothly, my brother and Jane went ahead with their wedding without giving a second thought to our father's death. From then on, my mother and I never mentioned it, but we felt our relationship with my brother had been completely severed. Out of the blue, my brother showed up at our doorstep. When I opened the front door in response to his, "I've got a delivery," over the intercom, there stood my brother and Jane. I was caught off guard as the monitor only showed silhouettes. As soon as I opened the door, my brother and Jane, carrying large luggage, barged in, pushing me aside. Hey, what's the rush?" I protested. It seemed that my brother had completely forgotten the words of our father, who had once told him never to step into our house again. The two of them, who had brashly entered the house, put down the luggage they were carrying in the hallway and started talking nonsense at me. "You and Mom should leave this house immediately." "What? Isn't Mom diagnosed with dementia? This luxurious mansion is not suited for someone like her and a loser like you who never improves. This kind of mansion should be taken over by glamorous people like Jane and me. So you guys should leave right away." "What?" I was stunned. What on earth was my brother talking about? After 3 years since our father's death, he hasn't apologized, visited the grave, or done anything at all, and now he's asking for the mansion. Furthermore, while presuming that our mother has dementia, he's planning to evict her. I was left speechless. Then our mother emerged from a room in the back. "Catherine, what's going on?" As my mother peeked out and saw my brother, she said something unbelievable. "Oh, who might you be?" "If you're a stranger, please leave," she said. Hearing this, my brother and Jane laughed mockingly at her. "See, this is how she is every time we call her. Her dementia must be getting worse. I'll leave it to you to take care of Mom. You can have Mom. I'll take the mansion. After all, I'm the eldest son, so it's only right that I get the mansion." With that, my brother walked deeper into the house. Moreover, Jane, imitating Bob, turned to me and our mother and said, "Take the old lady and get out. I never want to see you again." I rushed to my mother's side and asked, Are you okay?" After that, as if we were being driven out, my mother and I left the mansion, and certainly leaving all the old furniture behind. My mother and I took our belongings and fled the house. Fortunately, a friend of mine who heard about our situation offered us his house, saying he was abroad and couldn't take care of it. Fortunately, his cousin was taking care of the house, but since he's going to be transferred to another state next year, it seemed like perfect timing since there would be no one to look after the house. Upon arriving at the house and setting down our luggage, my mother and I finally felt at ease and took a deep breath. Then my mother said with a laugh, "We've left that house, and I still don't like the way Bob and Jane act. But maybe we should sell the house." She said it outright. I asked my mother the question that had been on my mind. "Bob said you have dementia, Mom. What's that about?" "Oh, that. About 2 years ago, I started getting frequent requests from those two to lend them money. But they didn't even come to their father's funeral, and they never contacted me afterwards. I just couldn't comprehend how they had the nerve to ask for money. So every time, I pretended not to know them and said, 'Oh, I don't know you. You're a stranger to me, right?' LPC. It seems that Bob and Jane misunderstood my mother's indifference and disregard for them, treating them as strangers because she didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. They mistook this as her genuinely forgetting who they were. That's why they thought she had dementia. In any case, I think it's wrong to evict someone you think has dementia." My mother immediately decided to arrange for the sale of the mansion. We'd been talking about selling the overly large mansion since our father passed away, and we were living there just the two of us. At that time, one of the executives from my father's company, where I am now receiving training as a successor, asked me to sell him the mansion if we were planning to sell. So the buyer is pretty much decided. All that's left is to go through the formalities. When I talked to a real estate acquaintance and explained the situation to the executive of the buyer, they agreed that if we left Bob and Jane alone, the house would be in serious trouble and something needed to be done quickly. And then, a week later, my smartphone rang incessantly. My mother's phone was the same. There were many calls from Bob to my mother's phone and from Jane to mine. They both probably wanted to tell us the same thing, but we found it amusing and decided to ignore them for 30 minutes, and we just enjoyed our tea. As we chatted, an hour passed without us noticing, and it seemed like Bob and Jane had been trying to reach us the whole time. When I finally answered the call, Jane exclaimed, "Finally, Why didn't you answer immediately? There's a big problem. The house has been taken over. Wait, didn't you two take over the house? I think we're the ones who should be saying that we've been taken over, I responded. No, Bob and I took over this mansion, but now strange people have come and are demanding that we leave. They just barged into the house and are trying to kick us out. Our mansion has been taken over, she exclaimed. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I really wanted to tell her that they were the ones who invaded the house in the first place and were unlawfully occupying it. Chuckling a bit, I replied, You're talking about taking over, but you're not even the legal owner. My mother, who is the rightful owner, has sold the house to a new owner. So, strangers who have no connection at all should quickly move out. What? She sold it? To this mansion. But this mansion belongs to Bob, she responded in shock. When did anyone ever say that? I asked. Well, no one said it, but Bob is the eldest son. Hector's, isn't this house, this property, and his dad's company eventually going to belong to him? And I'll be living elegantly as the wife of the CEO in this mansion. Despite all of that, Jean was frantic. I burst out laughing again. The fact that she thought that just because he was the eldest son, he would automatically receive the mansion and become the CEO of the company his father used to run was astonishing. Such naive thinking. Given Jane's staunch belief, Bob probably also believed that he would inherit both the mansion and the company. It's extra, as even though no one had ever promised him that. Again, I laughed at Jane's words. Bob as a CEO. I'll let you as a CEO's wife. How can you even dream of such things? You're both still working as low-level employees at the company where you first got picked up, without ever studying to succeed the business. She probably didn't expect to be ridiculed. Stunned by my words, Chan retorted, What? In that case, I'll inherit the company from Uncle. I laughed even more. You should at least check your company's personnel announcement. As for my uncle's company, his cousin's son became the president last month. So there's no way for Bob to become CEO, and I can't be a CEO's wife. Jane was in disbelief. That's correct. Can I hang up now? I don't think I need to talk to strangers anymore. I replied. Wait, please. Catherine, give us some money. Jane pleaded. Well, goodbye then. I ended the call. I later heard from Uncle about what happened next. Bob and Jane didn't want to leave the mansion. They clung to the pillars and refused to go. Uncle had to come and pick them up. It seems that since they were hired by Uncle's company, they have been undergoing a strict education, and they were so scared that they cried as Uncle took them away. It was decided that they would be left at a mountain retreat of one of Uncle's acquaintances because they were too unpredictable when left on their own. They've been warned by Uncle that if they don't straighten up at the retreat, they won't be able to leave the mountain for the rest of their lives. That's the story. Despite this, they've tried to escape multiple times, but they've been caught each time. As for me, the person who said he would take care of the house management was my fiancé, who's currently working abroad. I'm currently living in his parents' house. He's planning to end his long-term assignment abroad this year, so we'll be planning our wedding ceremony soon. Thought my mother and uncle, who helped us out, will be invited to the wedding. Of course, we will not invite Bob and Jane. Oh, your father is standing up. Come quickly. In my surprise, my voice broke into a strange squawk. No way. What the? Echoed my husband in equal shock. In our astonishment, my father-in-law gently said, "Well then, shall we get going?" And to our spa retreat. My name is Rachel. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. My husband, Bob, is an ordinary office worker of the same age. Our son, Michael, is also an office worker, married and a father to a baby boy, not even a year old. His wife is a very nice person, and our family relationships are good. However, the discord with my husband's family was always a problem. This goes back to when we decided to get married. At the age of 27, we were colleagues in love. I had heard that he came from an ordinary family, but when it came time to get married, it turned out that his family was actually wealthy, and all his family members had impressive backgrounds. His parents had been successful in running a trading company, and his younger brother, Kevin, who's 2 years younger than Bob, had graduated from a prestigious university and was actively running an IT company. By the way, Kevin had already been married, and his wife was a successful career woman. During the meet and greet with his family, my mother-in-law landed the first punch. "You're the one?" As expected, you seem to have no outstanding qualities. You must be happy to become the bride of a wealthy family like ours. Furthermore, the mother-in-law and Kevin's wife got along very well. I felt a bit uneasy, but I believed Bob when he said, "Don't worry." I've always been disliked by my mother, and I've had little contact with the family. And we got married as planned. Ever since we got married, my mother-in-law has been making snide remarks at me. When I gave birth to our first son through a difficult C-section, she said, "Section is such an easy way to give birth." Kevin's wife gave birth naturally, and it was a breeze. High-achieving career women just operate on a different level. When our son entered elementary school, she said, "Kevin's kid goes to a famous private school." Bob remained calm, but one day he told me this story. "I've always been compared. No matter what I did, I was always just average, while Kevin was smart, good at sports, and could do anything. So Mother always showed interest in him. Whenever she had the chance, she prioritized Kevin. The only refugee I had was our father. Dad treated Kevin and me equally. But it seems like Mom didn't like that, and over time, I think their relationship started to deteriorate. Indeed, as Bob said, my father-in-law is a very gentle and calm person. Whenever my mother-in-law said something awful to me, he would casually send me supportive texts and even apologize on occasion. When our son started elementary school, it was our father-in-law who gifted him a wonderful backpack. And when Bob made a mistake at work and was ordered to relocate for a while, it was his father who provided us with emotional and financial support. My father-in-law retired from managing the trading company at the age of 75. But the mother-in-law retired at the same time, and that brings us to the present. I have grown to feel an indescribable sense of gratitude towards my father-in-law. However, my father-in-law fell and hit his tailbone. It seems he slipped on the stairs at home. When we rushed to Bob's parents' house out of concern, we found the mother-in-law and Kevin's family there. The mother-in-law said, "You are so careless. You need to rest for a while. At Protectol, I've been thinking about moving in together." "Yes," my husband asked, to which the mother-in-law replied, "Of course not. Who would want to live with plain folks like you who are content with mediocrity?" I meant Kevin and his wife. That they're top-notch in everything, so I don't have to worry about my old age. And that's how the cohabitation with their parents and Kevin's family began. Our house and my husband's parents' home are just about a 10-minute drive away. As expected of a wealthy family's home, it's a magnificent house with even a small pond in the garden, looking like a mini park. My father-in-law, who loves gardening, had planted many colorful flowers in the yard. Not long after they started living together, I visited my husband's parents' house to check on the situation. When I went into my father-in-law's room, believe it or not, he was laid to rest in a dimly lit corner of the walk-in closet. But that's not all. The study that my father-in-law had been using before his injury was now being used nonchalantly by my husband's younger brother. I was so shocked by the situation that I complained to my mother-in-law. "Isn't the way you're treating him terrible?" My mother-in-law, with an indifferent look on her face, retorted, "Oh, since he won't be using it, Kevin is just making good use of it for his work from home." She said that nonchalantly. But still, it's pitiful for him to be in such a dark place. When I got angry, my mother-in-law got even angrier. "We're just using unused space. Don't you understand the concept of making good use of space?" I couldn't respond to her anymore and went back to my father-in-law. "I'm sorry for causing you worry." "No, it's nothing. Is there anything I can do to help?" Then my father-in-law, looking lonely, said, "If it's not too much trouble, could you water the flowers in the garden for me?" Looking at the garden, I saw the once beautiful flowers wilting. Fortunately, I also loved gardening and readily agreed. On. I used the excuse of gardening to visit my husband's parents' house daily and also take care of my father-in-law. Although my mother-in-law and brother-in-law seemed annoyed, I couldn't be bothered with that when thinking about my father-in-law. After some time, my father-in-law had his birthday. My mother-in-law informed us that they would have a family party for my father-in-law's 80th birthday. My husband and I were also invited, and we were supposed to have a fun birthday party. And the day of the party, when we arrived at the house, the party had already started, and my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were chatting. But my father-in-law was nowhere to be found. "Oh, where is he?" Then my mother-in-law was nowhere to be found. "Oh, where is he?" Then my mother-in-law answered with a smile. "Huh, he's in his usual spot. It's too much trouble to move his bed, right? He told us to go ahead and have fun without him." I was dumbfounded, and then I got angry. But that doesn't mean you should leave your husband alone. This is supposed to be a celebration for him. My mother-in-law, looking irritated, said, "Well then, why don't just the two of you go to him? I don't like being in such a dark place." "Understood." As I said that, my husband mumbled, "Mom, that's not right." And we both went to my father-in-law. "Oh, you've come." My father-in-law greeted us with immense joy at our visit. "Happy birthday. We hope your injury heals quickly and you regain your strength soon." We celebrated his birthday in the dimly lit room. He was delighted by the yellow umbrella we gifted him, hoping he would use it when he got better. He stared at it happily for a long time. Even after his birthday, I continued to help him with the garden flowers every day. However, he remained bedridden. Then one day, something astonishing happened. As I arrived at my husband's parents' house early in the morning, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, with their large suitcases, appeared in front of me. Up. "Well, take good care of him, okay?" "What? What do you mean?" Surprised, I turned to my mother-in-law, who said, "We're off to a week-long trip to Hawaii." "It's obvious if you look." "Exclamation. I wasn't informed about any trip," I replied. "There was no need to tell you." "What about him?" "He'll be fine if you take care of him." "We can't take him along. We're tired of caring for him every day." "Don't we even get a break?" "That's right," chimed in the brother-in-law and his wife. I was flabbergasted beyond anger. "All right then." Iful cursory. "Safe travels?" I said this with a thick layer of sarcasm and took the house key from her. "Can't wait for the beach. It's been a while." Ignoring my glaring stare, my mother-in-law and the brother-in-law's family left. Once they were gone, I quickly finished gardening and went into my father-in-law's room. "I'm really sorry." Rachel, his face looked downcast. "No worries, just rest easy," I told him. I placed a small table next to his bed and laid out his favorite dishes. "That's for me," I called my husband, and the three of us had dinner. But despite the circumstances, our lively dinner tasted great and was enjoyable. Suddenly, I noticed my father-in-law, who was sipping his soup, had teary eyes. "Extradents. Is everything all right? Did something not taste good?" "Worried?" asked him, to which he quietly replied, "No, it's not that. I'm just very grateful for you. You're really the best daughter-in-law one could hope for." Even though my mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family would always have lively dinners downstairs, my father-in-law would spend his days alone upstairs. Just thinking about it made my heart ache. Since the next day was a day off, my husband and I decided to stay at their house for the night. We had a pleasant chat until my father-in-law fell asleep. The next morning, I was shocked when I saw the garden. My father-in-law was standing there, tending to the flowers. "What are you doing?" "Good morning." "Rachel." As if nothing had happened, he was gardening. I rushed to call my husband. "Bob, your dad, he's standing up." "Come quick," I exclaimed, my voice high-pitched with surprise. "Ad's bedridden, remember?" My husband rushed to the porch, only to be equally surprised. "Whoa, what?" Seeing our stunned faces, my father-in-law calmly said, "Well, shall we go on a spa trip then, huh?" Ignoring our surprise, my father-in-law remained composed and asked us to prepare for a one-night trip. Excitational in our state of shock, we did as told, went home, packed for a one-night trip, and returned. Sure enough, my father-in-law was still standing, looking very energetic. "Could you drive?" Excitations, we headed to a spa inn. Once we settled down, we asked him, "What on earth is happening?" This with a grin, my father-in-law confessed, "I'm sorry for deceiving you. I overheard a secret conversation between my wife and Kevin shortly after we started living together. The conversation went something like this. He's gonna be bedridden at this rate." "It's really a bother," said my mother-in-law. "Then let's put him in a good facility. He doesn't have much time left. Let's change the ownership of the land and house to us before he passes away. If we get him to write a will, it'll be perfect. As long as we get a considerable portion, that is, he's bedridden, I can convince him easily," said Kevin. "That's a good idea. Once we decide on this, we should act quickly. When we return from the vacation in Hawaii that we're gonna take with his pension savings, let's put our plan into action," said my mother-in-law. "Sounds good," agreed Kevin. My father-in-law, who overheard this, knew not only of their plans for after his demise, but also of their vacation to Hawaii. "They are not my family anymore," he thought to himself, and he decided not to leave his land, house, or assets to his wife and Kevin. But to fool them, he decided to pretend to be bedridden and maintained his leg strength by walking around the second floor when no one was around. And so he'd been thinking all along about who to let inherit the estate. My father-in-law said proudly, "I've been feigning bedridden all this time, waiting for the right opportunity. I want you all to inherit my estate." My mother-in-law and brother-in-law, who had been enjoying a trip to Hawaii, returned home a week later. By that time, my father-in-law had already consulted with a lawyer he had hired in advance and had transferred the ownership of the land and house to my husband. Furthermore, he had finalized a will regarding the inheritance. Then, on the day of their return, my mother-in-law and others were surprised to see my father-in-law walking briskly around. "What's happening?" they exclaimed in astonishment. He told them, "We need to talk about the future." They come to the living room now. He called all the family members into the living room. "Hey, why are you standing?" my mother-in-law asked, shocked. "I've been well for a while. I've been doing physical therapy secretly at night after you all have gone to bed. I've seen through all your plans." "What plans?" My mother-in-law played dumb. "Aren't you trying to put me in a nursing home, make this land and house yours, and ensure you inherit it? And make sure you inherit all the estate." His strong words made his mother-in-law and brother-in-law Kevin paled. Dad, you must be mistaken. I've heard with my own ears the conversation you had with her in my room. There's no mistake, you must have enjoyed the Hawaii trip with the pension I had saved. It's easy to see if you look at the bank book. Just glared at them and said, first of all, about this land and house I've decided to give them to my eldest son, Bob. He spread the deed on the table. What his mother-in-law and Kevin were petrified. There's more to it. He continued the conversation. Regardless of their reactions, I've decided to ask Bob and his wife to manage my estate. I've made a will to, why no offense. But Bob is just an average worker. We can manage money better. After all, we run a business. Kevin finally interjected. Managing money is indeed challenging. That's why I've introduced them to a competent lawyer and tax accountant. But Kevin is superior to Bob in every aspect. He spoke sternly to his persistent mother-in-law. Kevin, isn't your company on the verge of collapse? But how do you know that I have a friend who's well-informed about business matters? Your company is seeking large loans. But you have no hope of repayment. Do you what at my father-in-law's accusation? My brother-in-law. Kevin started to panic, looking like he might spit up his drink. You know, the other day a reporter from the Financial Times came to interview me. He was talking about investments or something like that. My husband responded, laying a business card from a well-known newspaper on the desk. And that reporter wanted me to tell you the truth has already been uncovered. What does that mean, Kevin, as my father-in-law interrogated him? Kevin seemed to resign himself and confessed, I really did fail with my investment. I got carried away by a fellow entrepreneur's sweet talk. I rounded up investors and handed the Sinks money over to him, and then he disappeared. He ran off with the money. I was planning to sell the real estate I inherited from Dad to cover the debt. He admitted and hung his head in shame. But Kevin, you promised it would definitely be profitable. What about my share? What, Mom, you invested too? My husband threw up his hands in exasperation when I heard it. Accepts and guaranteed to be profitable. I invested $300,000. I told my friends the same story, and they should have invested about $200,000 in total. What? So that's a total of $500,000. I was shocked following my husband's surprise. Kevin, you call yourself a businessman, and yet you can't even spot a scam like that. I can't entrust my fortune to someone like you. Have some shame. And you. I knew about your $300,000 investment when you went to Hawaii. I checked all the bank cards in our house. You will have to take responsibility and leave this house. What? That's too much. This house is all I have. You and Kevin were the ones who took this precious house for granted. And Dad, help me out here. Please help. Ignoring their desperate pleas, my father-in-law left the room. Afterwards, my brother-in-law, Kevin, was left scrambling to repay the investment money, and he had to let go of his company. He tried to start another one, but with his reputation completely ruined, he failed. His high and mighty wife couldn't tolerate such a condition, and they soon divorced. But to the mother-in-law, whom she used to get along with them so well, turned hostile due to financial strains, leading to constant quarrels towards the end. My father-in-law and mother-in-law also ended up divorcing at a very old age. When it came to the division of assets during the divorce, the majority of the funds had to be used to repay the investments made to the mother-in-law's friends, leaving them with virtually nothing. If I got divorced and in a financial pinch, my mother-in-law is getting by with the little money she gets from my father-in-law every month, but all we hear are complaints. She lost her family, money, and is now living alone in loneliness. I bumped into her in the neighborhood the other day. She, still prideful as ever, claimed that living alone is comfortable, but her loneliness was clearly showing. As for me and my husband, we decided to live with my father-in-law. I spend my days enjoying gardening with my father-in-law in our spacious backyard. Furthermore, our son's family welcomed a new member, a girl, which made our family more lively. Above all, seeing my father-in-law looking so happy is the best. This is because his grandchildren and great-grandchildren come to visit every weekend. Hence, when it rains, my father-in-law would happily go for a walk, using the yellow umbrella I gave him. Seeing him like this, I feel content every day. A skirted funeral dress is too revealing. You must be trying to attract men. I've had enough of my husband's biased thoughts. Divorce? Bring it on. I'm leaving this house. My name is Kate. I'm a 40-year-old huge chocolate lover who ends up eating almost all of a family-sized chocolate bar by myself before I know it. I remember always fighting with my sister over it. Looking back, I wasn't a very mature older sister, but I know adults who are much less mature, plus more mature than I was. I was 25 years old back then. I just married my husband, Kevin, who worked in a bank. We started dating through a friend's introduction and got married in about 6 months. Everyone was envious of my life that was going so well, but after getting married, my once kind husband started to change gradually. Welcome home. You must be tired. What about dinner? It's ready. You should take a bath and relax. Every time my husband came home from work, we would have this exchange. Of course, I would greet him at the entrance, and if dinner wasn't ready, he would be grumpy. So, I always came home from work before my husband prepared dinner and cleaned the bathtub. I won't say it wasn't a bother, but thanks to my husband's high salary, we were able to live in a detached house and live a married life that others envied. I didn't mind the minor whims of my husband, thinking that every household goes through such things. However, my husband's attitude got worse and worse. This episode, even after getting married, I often visited my parents' house when I was off work. It was to see my 14-year-old sister, who was much younger than me. In our family, where both parents worked, I think I raised my sister for the most part. It's not that I was dumped on by my parents, but I simply couldn't take my eyes off her because she was so dear to me. Because my sister was very frail. She had her good days, but she was also frequently hospitalized, and there were times when we were told that tonight was a critical time. She could be gone tomorrow. When I thought about that, it was inevitable that I would have a deeper love for her than a normal sister. That's why, even after I got married, I went to see my sister when she was off school. But my husband didn't like this. Which is more important, me or your sister? When a woman gets married, she should serve her husband's family. My mother didn't do anything like that. You're a failure as a wife. My husband started to express his theory and often preached to me for nearly an hour. At that time, none of my friends were married. So when I talked to my senior at work about my husband, she said, "It's your fault. When you get married, you have to serve your husband." I thought that was how it was. Looking back now, I realize I was ignorant. But even so, not seeing my sister was not an option for me, because my sister's health was deteriorating. She was hospitalized again and was allowed to visit only for a short time in a sterile room. But rushing to visit when possible is a natural thing to do as a family. I sometimes took a day off from work to go, and I started going to the hospital even on days when my husband was off. But of course, my husband vehemently opposed this. One day, he suddenly invited his mother, my mother-in-law, to our home. I take care of our home properly. What's wrong with that? Really, you're a hopeless woman. Even after I've told you countless times not to wear skirts, you still wear them. It's hard to look at a married woman in a skirt. What's wrong with wearing the clothes I like? And this is a dress that my sister chose for me. I can't just give up on it. There you go again. Whenever something happens, it's always about your sister, Kate. The one you should care the most about is me. Hey, I have a job too. There's no reason for you to say you're the one providing. This is going nowhere. Listen, I've contacted your workplace and told them you're quitting. You should be grateful. From now on, you're going to focus on the house. What are you talking about? What are you doing without asking me? I'm not listening to you. From today, you're going to live with my mom. You can learn from her what it means to be a wife. I don't understand what you're saying. You're acting crazy. Shut up. The enraged husband smashed a glass on the floor. He didn't stop there. In his fury, he began to throw things around indiscriminately. Needless to say, seeing the shattered glass made me truly afraid of my husband for the first time. Regret washed over me, wondering how I'd ended up marrying such a man. I called my company to cancel my resignation, but they told me not to cause trouble. Apparently, my husband had demanded my resignation in a way that was borderline abusive. So I lost my job and ended up staying at home as my husband wished. When I reported that I had quit my job as he wanted, my husband cheerfully apologized, saying things like, I might have gone a bit too far, but there was no way I could believe his smile after seeing his true nature. The next day, my husband suddenly brought home a bunch of his work colleagues. He proudly announced, I thought I'd show off my beautiful wife, and even his subordinates and colleagues chimed in, complimenting my looks. To top it off, he unilaterally announced, my wife is an excellent cook. Please try her food before you leave. Wait, this is too sudden? We don't have enough food for everyone. It's okay, something simple will do. I don't want you to overwork yourself. I can go shopping if need be. Hearing this, one of his female co-workers exclaimed, "Your husband really loves you. I'm jealous." No, this man just has a good public face. If he truly cared about his wife, he wouldn't bring home a bunch of colleagues as if forgetting about our huge fight the day before. Filled with resentment, I began preparing the meal with my mother-in-law. After about 3 hours of eating and drinking, his colleagues left our home. My voice instinctively rose at my husband's disgruntled demeanor. Memories, I was anxious, wondering what would happen if he threw a tantrum like he did the day before. "Can't you be a little more cheerful? It looks like I'm not able to educate my wife properly." I didn't remember doing anything to deserve his criticism, but I couldn't talk back. I was scared. "Mom, give her a score for today." He turned to his mother for support. "Well, she's not doing a good job supporting her husband, is she?" "I can't give her any score." "That's my mom. She knows what's going on." "She can't even score you. How hilarious is that?" Laughing uproariously, my husband lightly tapped me. Also, about the meal. I tasted a bit, but wasn't it not to Kevin's liking? "That's right, Mom. Keep it coming." "What about her clothes?" There were men among the colleagues, but she's showing off her skin. "What do you think? As a woman, it's indecent to show off your collarbone. She should cover it with a scarf or turtleneck." Whose fault is it that the colleagues suddenly invaded this house and I had to cook without even having time to change my clothes? It's Kevin's. I didn't understand why I had to be belittled so unilaterally. She really is something, isn't she? Despite me educating her day in and day out, nothing sticks. I bet she's just not very bright. Out about it. In the end, that day, I ended up enduring a lecture for nearly 2 hours. By the time I finally managed to get a bath and was about to sleep, it was already nearing dawn at 4 a.m. Like having to prepare my husband's lunchbox, I decided to give up on sleep that day. Even after that, my husband's attempts to educate his wife continued as I kept visiting my younger sister. After about a month and a half, I received news of my sister's passing. I wished it was a lie, and the first words I returned to my mother, who announced the sad news, were, "It's a lie, right?" I had been told over and over that her condition was critical, and I had even had my last visit with her. I thought I was prepared, but my heart couldn't catch up. She was just 14 years old. I wondered whether my sister, who had fought through painful treatments and repeated hospitalizations, had truly been happy in her life. As her older sister, had I been able to provide her with joy? However, the last expression I saw on her face was peaceful. The expression I saw on my sister's face at the hospital was a smile. It seemed she hadn't suffered. "You fought hard and you did well. Thank you for everything." With tears streaming down my face, I hugged my sister and said my final goodbye. The funeral was over in the blink of an eye, and I realized that I hadn't been home for several days. I informed my husband of my sister's passing, but as expected, he didn't attend the funeral. Far from it, he said something like, "You should prioritize me over the dead." So, not wanting to hear such vile words at such a time, I ignored him and hung up the phone. That's when everything was over, and I returned home with a heavy heart. My husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me at the entrance, standing like imposing statues. "You're quite late, aren't you? A family member has died. It's not like I could come back in 2 or 3 hours." "How can you tell such a lie so easily? What are you in your rebellious phase? Always lying and opposing me. Whose wife are you? Wait a minute. My sister died." "It's not a lie." "Huh, I wonder. Even if you show me you in a skirted suit, you haven't welcomed me home from work for days?" "That's impossible, of course." "Impossible? My. If you love your husband, you should be able to do it. As a wife, welcome your husband home, you incompetent wife." "Don't tell me you're having an affair." "What?" "No matter how many times I tell you, you show your skin, and the other day you were giving my colleague suggestive looks." "You just like men, don't you?" "What a shameful woman. What the hell?" As I was about to retort out of anger, forgetting my fear of my husband, it happened. "Divorce, hon? That's fine. A woman as frivolous as Kate doesn't suit Kevin, right? No, divorce is a bit, I understand." "I'll divorce." I immediately jumped on my mother-in-law's words, suggesting divorce. My husband mumbled and kept saying to stop the divorce, but I had no intention of listening. If I didn't take this chance to divorce my husband, I was scared that he would become violent again. I was certain that now was the time. A chance. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house. Until the end, my husband kept saying things like, "If you apologize, I'll forgive you," but I ignored him, thinking he must be out of his mind. Still persistent, in the end, he grabbed my arm strongly and said, "Wait," so I hit his face hard with my bag and ran away. From there, I headed straight for a certain place, a room in an apartment that had been prepared just in case something like this happened. That dressed the moment I entered the room. I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. "Hello, Kate? Did you arrive safely?" "Yes, I'm fine. I'm in a taxi, so Kevin won't find out." "That's good. Hire a lawyer and proceed with the divorce quickly." "Yes, I'm looking forward to living together." Actually, my mother-in-law and I had been pretending to be on bad terms in front of my husband. This started the day my husband brought a colleague home. After his sermon ended and my husband fell asleep, my mother-in-law approached me. "Leave this house. Escape from my son," she said. Each time my husband complained that his wife was hopeless, my mother-in-law, who seemed suspicious, would ask, "Really?" Apparently, her late husband was very similar to my husband, and she had suffered quite a bit. It's in my mother-in-law's generation. Divorce was considered shameful, and she ended up not being able to divorce, but she seemed to want me to be free. Seeing the exchanges between me and my husband, she seemed to have thought, "I must help her." That's when my mother-in-law, through her friend, found a property where a woman could live alone safely. It's hard to believe that she's the mother of my husband. I can't thank my kind mother-in-law enough. Cripsellos, I've been living in the apartment that my mother-in-law prepared for me for half a month now, and finally she came to my room, pulling a suitcase. Welcome. Looking forward to it from now on. Since living with us, my mother-in-law found out that her own son had become like that. Up until then, he seemed like a good boy, just the ordinary face he showed to his colleagues. My mother-in-law blamed herself, thinking that he became this way after getting married because of his genes from his father or scenes he saw when he was young. As for me, even if what happened in his childhood was the cause, I believe the real problem lies with a grown man's inability to control his own emotions. So I don't blame my mother-in-law at all. My husband is also taking good care of my mother-in-law now, but that's because he thinks that she's on his side. I don't know what he'll do if he finds out that my mother-in-law has been helping me with this divorce. So when my mother-in-law prepared this house, I proposed, "Would you like to live with me for a while?" She hesitated, saying, "Even though you're my daughter-in-law now, once you guys get divorced, I'll be a stranger to you." But I told her, after all you've done for me, there's no daughter-in-law or anything like that. You're like my mother or my sister. I really think so. But on the way back from my sister's funeral, my mother-in-law naturally led the conversation to divorce, intentionally assisting me. Because I understood this right away, I also jumped on the divorce. I thought it would take more preparation and time to run away from my husband, but thanks to my mother-in-law, that time came early. There's nothing but gratitude. Finally, the divorce was finalized through the lawyer. Exter exi teachin, now I'm officially free. It was 4 days later. I don't know how he tracked me down, but my ex-husband was waiting for me in front of the apartment. "I found you. You're messing with me," my ex-husband raised his voice. Did he find out about that thing? While thinking about that, acted calm. "What do you want now? It's your fault that the credit card balance and the deposit balance have decreased." "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb." Actually, before the divorce, I was buying furniture for this house with my husband's credit card little by little. I also secretly withdrew money from the bank account. This is my plan. That when I consulted with my mother-in-law, she told me to go ahead and do it, so I emptied the account without any worries. The reason why my unemployed mother-in-law and I can live elegantly, having tea parties every night, is thanks to this money. That's my money. Are you just going to do whatever you want without consequences? Their money, the credit card you made after marriage, and the money we saved together, right? It's our shared property as a married couple. As I say this, I smile at him. Then, from behind me, "Oh, you found out, didn't you?" My mother-in-law came back from shopping. "Ah, you're back," I say with my ex-husband speechless behind me. "What? Why is Mom here?" "Well, because we're living together." My confused husband and my nonchalant mother-in-law. "So you lied about going back to your parents' house. And why are you living with Kate, not me?" "I don't understand. I've given up on you. Kevin, I was the one who helped Kate escape. And to tell you the truth, Kate and I had already teamed up behind your back when we started discussing the divorce. But Mom, you are trashing Kate like crazy. Yes, well, when I was ranting about her, I was actually picturing you in my mind. What do you mean? Because you're a dim-witted son, and the kind of son who gets upset over a woman's exposed collarbone. I thought Kate would be in danger. She deserved better than a husband like you. My ex-husband was stunned by his mother's words. I, on the other hand, found his mother's retort so amusing that I burst into laughter right then and there. Mom, you know I'm your son, right? Unfortunately, yes. I should have raised you better. I couldn't help it and burst out laughing even louder. You're just like your father, you know. Seeing you treat Kate so badly made me think of myself. I thought, what if she leaves? Then you might fall back. I might fall back on me. I couldn't risk it, so I separated from you and moved in with Kate for both our sakes. His mother's revelation brought tears to my ex-husband's eyes. Finally, when he yelled, "Is it my fault?" Why? You've neglected me, even his mother was laughing. Do I still need to parent a man who's about to turn 30? She scoffed. Our loud confrontation had attracted a few curious neighbors. They were chuckling at my ex-husband, saying, "What a spectacle he's making." Thanks to the watchful eyes of the neighborhood, he did not raise a hand against us and slunk back into his house. However, it seemed like he had gone off the deep end overnight. He started bad-mouthing us to his co-workers who used to come over for drinks at our place. My ex may look nice, but she neglects her husband. My mom is a mother who doesn't care about her child. They're both spendthrifts. He whined to anyone who would listen. However, one woman retorted, "You know, your behavior is a classic example of why women are wary of their husbands." It's a societal issue now. Although no one openly agreed, the office atmosphere implied that Kevin was in the wrong, and he began to feel cornered at work. Eventually, my ex-husband, who turned out to be sensitive, could no longer bear the judgmental looks and whispers. He hastily resigned from his job. He'd been so quick to verbally abuse me, yet he quit his job as soon as he was on the receiving end. How pathetic. Feeling lonely, he sent me a long-winded letter justifying his actions, boasting about his greatness as a man. The letter was a whopping 10 pages long. I was taken aback when I saw the thick envelope. I had blocked his texts, but if he could write this much by hand. I shuddered to think how many texts he would have sent. His last sentence was, "If you ever miss me, feel free to contact me." So I cheekily replied, "Then please proceed with the property division." Of course, that resulted in a huge fight as well. I used to live in fear when we were under the same roof, but not anymore. I stood my ground with my lawyer. In fact, even before his mother advised me to run. I've been secretly recording my ex-husband's actions at home in anticipation of a divorce. All the months I spent enduring his harsh words while living in that house paid off. Thanks to the evidence, I successfully finalized the division of property. Afterwards, I did my cohabitation with my ex-mother-in-law when I found a new job. But Tree, and though it was still a reasonable commute, she got herself a boyfriend. The person who introduced us to the apartment turned out to be him. She left holding hands with her boyfriend, saying, "Come visit us once we're settled." I must say, my ex-mother-in-law really surprised me. She's a wonderful woman, so I can understand why she's popular no matter her age. As for me, I spent my prime years focusing on work due to a career change, thinking I had missed the boat for remarriage. However, I started attending frequent online gatherings with my colleagues. Thanks to this, I had more chances to casually exchange contact information with people I usually didn't talk to, including a director from another department who showed interest in me. At first, I kept my distance since we worked at the same company, but as we started having private online conversations about things we couldn't discuss at work, we grew closer and began dating. To later meet Yuziarchin, the department head who hasn't been in a relationship for many years since his last girlfriend dumped him due to his overcommitment to work, treated me very carefully, saying I don't want to make the same mistake again. And happily, we've decided to get married next year. He is getting married for the first time, so I was worried whether his parents would dislike me, who's been divorced once, but I am relieved to see my relaxed in-laws saying, "Thank you for taking our son." When I told my former mother-in-law about the remarriage, she was very happy. Oh, and speaking of my ex-husband, he apparently got a job at a different bank and remarried, but given his personality, it seems like he got divorced again. He's now divorced 3 times. He works at a bank and has a good initial demeanor, and because he blames his previous divorces on his wives, it seems that women get caught. Even when my ex-mother-in-law tells women about my ex-husband's true nature at a marriage greeting, it seems that my ex-husband skillfully manipulates them. Well, once you reach 3 divorces, you'll probably be avoided by women, but I hope there won't be any more victims. I think he won't have a good end because he's probably hated by many women. Well, it's none of my business anymore. But a sharp, piercing sound echoed through the church. Immediately, my cheek began to burn with pain. Wait, did I just get slapped? How dare you lay hands on my man? A woman yelled. But whatever. I don't need a man who plays around like this. I'll give him to you, the woman who slapped me said, laughing in disbelief. My name is Amy. At 26, I'm working as an office worker. I've been dating my boyfriend, Evan, for 3 years now, and I'm starting to wonder if it's about time. About time for what? Well, of course, I mean marriage. I've heard that if you date for too long, you might become complacent and miss your opportunity to tie the knot. Yet if I keep waiting as is, who knows when we'll ever get married? So, I figure now is the time to speak up. The days of silent waiting are over. In this day and age, I think it's perfectly fine for women to make the first move. There's even a term for it, a reverse proposals. So one day after work, we met up and went to a ramen shop. There we agreed to get married with the simple exchange, How about now? Sounds good. Speaking, it's a bland proposal. Well, yes, there was a time when I dreamt of something more. Like a beautiful scenic viewpoint at night, or at a fancy restaurant, or even a big bouquet of flowers from him. But after 3 years together, those dreams tend to fade. I don't know about others, but I'm pretty pragmatic. Marriage is a turning point in life and a new beginning. I'm the type who would rather focus on the upcoming married life rather than the proposal itself. Anyway, the point is, we finally decided to get married. It's a cause for celebration. I thought Kevin might not be too keen, or that he might leave all the wedding planning to me. But to my surprise, he was quite enthusiastic about the ceremony. I want to be the star of the show at least once in my life, he said. As for me, I'm equally excited, and it's great to see him so motivated. Since we'll be taking time off work for our honeymoon after the wedding, I'm cramming in work to make sure I can leave without any worries. Naturally, this makes us very busy. But since I don't want to compromise on the planning, we need to find time to discuss it. For even sacrificing our weekends, it's just that hectic. Today, again, without a glance at the beautiful weather outside. Kevin and I were holed up in our room, talking things through. A date? What's that? Isn't tasty? Until the wedding, we're a team aiming for the success of a major project. Our wedding. There's no time for dates. In this fighting spirit, we were reviewing estimates for wedding venues when I heard Kevin say, "Not again," and I looked up. Funning at his cell phone screen, Kevin seemed rather annoyed. "What's up?" Just an old friend being overly persistent with their messages. Someone you're not close with. Yeah. It's been years since we drifted apart. How do they have your contact info then? A mutual friend from high school gave it out. Oh no, that's really not cool. I got pretty mad and they apologized, but it was already too late. Why not just block the number? I tried, but this person just makes new accounts to get in touch. That's kind of creepy. It's creeping me out too. This sounds like stalker level stuff, doesn't it? So who is this person? But a man with a thick beard or something. Are beards your pet peeve? Amy? I'm glad mine isn't that thick. I'd still like you, even if you had a thick beard. Kevin. Oh, you. Why are you blushing? We're getting married soon, you know. It's been so. We've been dating for 3 years, but he's still pretty shy. Well, that's one of the things I fell for, his purity. But if I ever said that, he'd probably turn red, so I kept it to myself. So who is this person? Well, it's not a guy. Oh, a woman. I'm not the type of woman to make a big fuss just because a woman is contacting my soon-to-be husband. Of course, if they seemed overly friendly, that'd be a different story. But it seems like he's not comfortable with her, so there's no reason for me to make a fuss. But it's natural to be curious, isn't it? Bring to the lengths of making new accounts just to reach him. So, who is she? She's my ex. Wow, didn't expect it to be his ex. But it was over between us even before high school graduation. We broke up, because she cheated on me when we were both too busy studying for the exams. Really? Yes. Since graduation, I've not been in touch with her at all, until she recently started to message me again. I had even forgotten she existed. I see. Judging by his reaction, he didn't seem to be lying. He's probably telling the truth. Then why is she contacting him? And so persistently. I announced our wedding to a group chat on Facebook because I couldn't meet everyone in person. I see. That's when she started sending me messages directly. What did the messages say? However, you're better off not knowing. How could he say that and expect me not to be curious? I swiftly grabbed his phone out of his hand. Maybe it was an invasion of his privacy, but I had a right to know. Maybe he understood my determination, as he didn't try to take the phone back. So, without hesitation, I decided to read the messages. What the hell is this? Indeed, the content was something I wish he hadn't shown me. The one named Holly seems to be opposed to getting married, starting with "Isn't it a bit early for marriage?" And from there, it's an onslaught of messages. You're bound to fail. You should quit. Are you just being taken advantage of because you're rushing into marriage? Is your partner only after your money? Marriage is hell. She goes on, adding, I'm the only one who understands Kevin. Understands Kevin, as in from high school. How can she say that without even knowing what he's like now? The worst part was when she insisted on seeing a photo of me who was supposed to be his bride, and when he refused, she assumed she must be ugly for sure. Even if I weren't particularly attractive, he chose me. Does she think a relationship with someone chosen for their looks would last? See, Kelly, what matters is what's inside. Man, she sounds intense. She was pretty harsh back in the day too, but she wasn't this bad. Didn't you break up with her because she cheated on you? She was cheating on me with one of my friends. They were, behind the school building. Seeing him dodge the question and his face darkened was more than enough to understand. Just witnessing the scene, especially between a friend and his girlfriend, that must have been a big shock. Did you distance yourself from that male friend too? Of course. I didn't speak to him until we graduated, and I haven't contacted him since. I have no idea what he's up to now. At least he's distancing himself from your ex-girlfriend, right? And with how often she contacts me, I'd assume she's moved on by now. All of this might be chalked up to youthful indiscretion, but that's why the shock was so big. Unlike adults, the love of high school kids is pure and unforgettable. I understand that. Well, I didn't have a boyfriend during my adolescence. He still seems to be receiving messages from his ex-girlfriend, but he's not trying to hide it, and I've stopped worrying about it. Just when I was getting busy and starting to forget about the existence of his ex-girlfriend, our wedding day finally arrived. The church attached to the hotel where the reception is taking place. I, the nervous bride, arm in arm with my equally tense father, walked down the aisle. Everyone is paying attention to me. This is probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Caught up in this strange elation. I'm in a good mood. Just with my spirits high, I now link arms with Kevin. That the foreign pastor adds to the atmosphere, and then, right at the moment when every bride's father would want to close his eyes, bang! The church doors swing open with force. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who said that. Kevin, standing at the front, and various voices from the seats of the attendees. As everyone's attention turns, standing at the violently open door is a woman we don't recognize. Oh, an unknown woman. Neither a coworker nor a friend. A truly unfamiliar woman. The moment she saw Kevin, who was as confused as I was, her eyes popped out in surprise, wide open. Seeing Kevin like that, I understood. Could it be? Polly. When I ask in a whisper that only he can hear, he nods slightly. I see. So, is this going to be like that famous movie scene? She couldn't have come to steal him away, could she? Excer with a grim expression, the ex-girlfriend marches up with heavy footsteps. Oh, no one steps in to stop her, too taken aback by the situation. Taking advantage of this, the ex-girlfriend gets closer and closer to us. I can't imagine Kevin going with his ex-girlfriend. But against my better judgment, my body moved. I spread my arms wide in front of him, standing my ground, refusing to let her take him. And then, no. I scream, and the shrill sound echoed almost simultaneously. What followed was an eerie silence. What just happened? For a moment, I didn't understand what was happening. However, the heat spreading across my cheek immediately after made me realize the situation. Amy, are you okay? Hudson, a moment later. Kevin peered into my face, looking at his worried expression. I understood that something was really wrong. When I hurriedly touched my cheek, it felt hot, as if burned. Kim, that's what you get for touching another woman's man. Still holding my cheek, I saw a figure standing defiantly in front of me. It was Kevin's ex-girlfriend, Holly, who had cheated on him and broken up with him in high school. She stood there, smirking and snorting with a satisfied look. Was I slapped? Wait, did she just slap me? Why? What for? Polly, what the hell are you doing? In my confusion, I heard Kevin shouting from beside me. At that point, the wedding venue burst into chaos. What the hell? Polly, what are you doing here on their big day? Isaac leaned towards us, shouting were Kevin's friends from his student days, people who knew about his ex-girlfriend. The ex-girlfriend tried to ward off the people trying to grab her, shrugged them off, and shouted, "Shut up." I was just giving this thief a taste of her own medicine. A thief? What is she talking about? As I was wondering, the ex-girlfriend looked at me with a smug face. You poor thing. We didn't even know he was two-timing you. What, two-timing? What does she mean? You heard from Kevin that we broke up, right? Oh, yes. I heard that you two hadn't been in touch since high school. Indeed, the ex-girlfriend snorted with laughter. And then, that's all a lie, she screamed. A lie. A lie? A lie? but I wish you had told me, or going to be husband and wife. After all, as I say this, he opens his eyes wide, then quickly turns teary-eyed my husband. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. While crying, my husband hugged me gently, but it didn't end happily there. What do you mean you're trying to end this? On a good note, don't let this man fool you. He was really cheating whether to believe my ex-girlfriend or my husband. I've made up my mind. I've decided to marry this man. I won't be swayed by the words of my ex-girlfriend. When I glared at my ex-girlfriend, she retreated under my spirit. At that moment, a shout rang out. So you're here, Holly. What next? Really, just as I was starting to calm down. Is there going to be another scene? Looking over there stood a man at the church entrance, someone I'd never seen before. Oh, Alex, why are you here? One of my buddies attending the wedding told me. The wedding told me you were causing a scene here. I thought you'd given up on our conversation and ran out. What are you doing? I have nothing to talk to you about. I'm just bored of hanging out with you for so long. It's just too dull. A man and a woman were arguing loudly. When I asked my husband, Kevin, in a low voice, "Who is that?" he looked troubled and explained, "He's the guy who stole my ex-girlfriend from me." So, in other words, the man called Alex was the one my husband's ex-girlfriend had cheated with during high school. They were in a relationship all this time. Even if it started with infidelity, wouldn't it be considered a pure love story? That's what one would think just hearing that. However, the ex-girlfriend declared, "I think Bob is a better man after all." Bob? Who is he? He's a friend from high school. He moved away for work and couldn't make it to the ceremony today. He just sent a congratulatory message. Why is he suddenly in the picture? Bob is the other man the ex-girlfriend was two-timing with. Just when they ran into each other by chance, she lied that she had broken up with Alex long ago and managed to start a relationship with Bob. Because Bob was far away, it seems there was no chance for him and Alex to run into each other. Also, Alex and Bob were not particularly close and were not in touch, so the truth didn't come out. Oh, I see. So it wasn't a pure love story at all. Although I do despise Alex for stealing my ex-girlfriend from me, I don't have any hard feelings about it now. I had no intention of contacting him and didn't plan to invite him to the wedding, but as long as he's doing well, that's all I care about. However, if she was two-timing him with Bob, that's a different story. I was pissed off and gave my ex-girlfriend a piece of my mind. So, is that why she caused all this drama today? Probably. She knew neither Alex nor Bob would be at the wedding. Even though she must have known it would come out eventually, she has always been shallow and short-sighted. Anyway, it was only a matter of time before her secret would be revealed once she consulted you. That's why she's short-sighted. Exactly. A quick glance revealed that the ex-girlfriend and Alex were still squabbling. Anyway, I said, "Excuse me, could you please leave now? I have no intention of canceling the ceremony and I'd like to continue as soon as possible. A feast awaits me at the reception." What? You're planning to continue the ceremony? The ex-girlfriend glared at me with an intense look. But of course, I am. I'm very happy right now, you see. What did you just say? It seems you're a serial cheater. Were you hoping to get involved with my husband as well? I? No. I wasn't thinking. Max seemed surprised by the slip of the tongue from the ex-girlfriend. What? You weren't satisfied. You weren't satisfied just two-timing with Bob. You were also after Kevin, who's getting married. No, it's not like that. Who would want a man like him? Either way, you were two-timing with Bob. I've had enough. Fortunately, I took you from Kevin, so I thought I should at least make you happy by marrying you as atonement, but I've lost that feeling now. What do you mean atonement? You just don't want to admit that you betrayed your best friend. Yes, that's right. I'm the worst. But you flitting to another man while you have a boyfriend, you're the worst too. Back in high school, you told me that Kevin was abusing you, that you were suffering, that you needed help. And I believed you. I was stunned. It seems the ex-girlfriend is a pathological liar. Kevin, I don't expect to be forgiven, but let me say this. I'm really sorry for what happened back then. Well, I was in disbelief. Alex sincerely apologized with a serious look on his face. My husband laughed and said, "It's okay. I'm happy, really happy right now." Is that so? Asked Alex, who responded, or a somewhat melancholic smile, took hold of his ex-girlfriend Holly and said, "Stop making a fool of yourself." Holly, let's go, and led her away. Wait a minute. I'm not finished talking. Kevin, when you get tired of that woman, contact me. I'm the only one who understands you. Until the very end, she said ridiculous things and left. What was that all about? Those of us left behind in the aftermath. Someone muttered under their breath, surely echoing the thoughts of everyone present. After that, the ceremony resumed without further interruption and concluded without a hitch. We did finish it, yes. I know it might be surprising, but we did. It was only natural. After all, we had been looking forward to it. A full-course meal we had agonized over choosing. In the end, I, the bride, was too busy to eat much of it. To the fact that I couldn't eat the meal might have made cry more than any congratulatory speeches from friends or letters of thanks to my parents. As for Holly, I heard from my husband's friend what happened afterward. X had contacted Bob, who had even taken the day off work to be there, and the three of them had a discussion. As a result, she was rejected by both men. It seemed both had intended to marry her until they found out about her two-timing. Naturally, that cooled their feelings. Why me? What did I do wrong? Don't leave me? She cried and wailed, having conveniently changed her tune after telling Alex she was leaving him in the chapel. Of course, both men ignored her and left. In the end, she clung to men till the end and never showed any remorse. After that, she started reaching out to my husband and every man she knew, it seemed. I'm a pitiful woman, she pleaded, but no one paid any attention to her. Eventually, she was removed from the group chat and her messages stopped. I heard she's been caught up with some bad guy and is working in a dubious place. My husband said in his usual calm manner. In our marriage, we have one rule: no secrets ever. Thinking about it, I really wanted to eat that feast. That hotel restaurant apparently has a similar full-course meal, though not exactly the same. Shall we go eat there? But it's probably expensive. We got some extra income, so we're good. Let's go. Yay, I'm so excited. Our married life is smooth sailing with my sweet husband. The trouble at the wedding is just a funny story now. So what's this extra income? A time I may have tried my luck at the casino. What about no secrets? Yeah, you're right. My husband gave a wry smutty, and I returned a full one, hugging his arm.